They said she was weak. They said she was worthless. They said an Omega could never stand against the might of trained warriors. But when the bodies of 50 soldiers lay broken in the snow, and the survivors limped back to their king with terror in their eyes, the entire realm learned a truth that would shake the foundations of their world. The smallest wolf in the kingdom had just become the greatest threat the Alpha King had ever faced. And now, he wanted her brought before him alive. Will she escape his wrath? Keep watching and remember to drop a like, share, and subscribe. In the ancient times, when the great forest stretched beyond the horizon and the mountains touched the very heavens, there existed a kingdom ruled by wolves who could walk as men. This was the kingdom of Silvermane, a realm of power and glory, where the strong commanded and the weak served without question. For generations, the laws of this land had remained unchanged, written in stone and sealed with blood. At the peak of the highest mountain stood the palace of the Alpha King, a fortress carved from black stone and crowned with silver. Within these walls lived Dante Silvermane, the most powerful Alpha the kingdom had ever known. His strength was legendary. His word was law. His warriors numbered in the thousands, each one trained from birth to serve and protect their king. No enemy had ever breached his borders. No challenger had ever survived his wrath. In the valleys below, far from the glory of the palace, existed another world entirely. Here lived the Omegas, the lowest rank of wolfkind. They were the servants, the workers, the forgotten souls who toiled in silence. The laws were clear and cruel. An Omega could not look an Alpha in the eye. An Omega could not speak unless spoken to. An Omega could not refuse any command given by those above their station. This was the way of things, the natural order, or so everyone believed. Among these Omegas lived a young woman named Kira. She was small, even for an Omega, with silver hair that fell like moonlight down her back and eyes the color of storm clouds. She worked in the lower villages, gathering herbs and tending to the sick, always keeping her head down and her voice quiet. The other Omegas pitied her. The higher ranks did not notice her at all. She was invisible, insignificant, nothing. But Kira held a secret. On the night of her 16th year, when the moon turned red as blood in the sky, something had awakened inside her. A power she did not understand. A strength she had never felt before. She had hidden it well for 2 years, never letting anyone see, never giving anyone reason to suspect. Because she knew what happened to Omegas who were different. They disappeared. They were taken to the palace and never seen again. The trouble began on a winter morning when frost covered the ground like diamonds. Kira was gathering firewood at the edge of the great forest when she heard the screams. She dropped her bundle and ran toward the sound, her heart pounding. Through the trees, she saw them. A group of children from her village, surrounded by rogue wolves. These were dangerous creatures, wolves who had turned feral, who attacked without mercy. The children were going to die. Kira did not think. She did not plan. She simply moved. The power inside her erupted like a dam breaking, flooding her body with strength she had never imagined. Her wolf surged forward, tearing through her human form. But this was not the small, weak wolf of an Omega. This was something else entirely. Her fur blazed silver-white, bright as starlight. Her size rivaled that of a beta warrior. Her speed was impossible. She tore through the rogues like a storm through leaves. Her claws found throats. Her teeth crushed bones. In less than a minute it was over. The rogue wolves lay dead. The children stood unharmed, staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. And Kira stood there, covered in blood, knowing that everything had just changed. She should have run. She should have disappeared into the forest and never looked back. But the children needed to get home safely. So she led them back to the village, and by the time they arrived, the news had already spread. The Omega who fought like a warrior, the impossible wolf, the girl who broke every law of nature. By nightfall, the beta warriors arrived, 50 of them, sent from the palace itself to investigate this disturbance. Their leader was a man named Garrett, a veteran soldier with scars covering his arms and murder in his eyes. He did not come to ask questions. He came to eliminate a threat. "You are the Omega called Kira," he said, his voice cold as winter ice. "You have violated the natural order. You have used power that does not belong to you. By the law of the Alpha King, you will be executed immediately." The villagers gathered in silence, watching. No one would help her. No one would speak for her. This was the way of things. Omegas did not resist. Omegas did not fight back. But Kira had spent 2 years hiding who she truly was. She had spent 2 years living in fear, and she was done. "I will not die today," she said, her voice clear and strong. Garrett laughed. His warriors laughed with him. "You think you have a choice, Omega. You think your little trick with the rogues means anything against trained soldiers. We are 50. You are 1. This ends now." He gave the signal. His warriors attacked. What happened next would be spoken of for generations. Kira's transformation was like lightning striking the earth. Her silver wolf erupted into being, and with it came power that defied all understanding. She moved between the warriors like a ghost, too fast to follow, too strong to stop. Bones broke under her claws, armor crumpled like paper. Blood stained the snow red. The warriors could not touch her. They were trained and skilled and powerful, but she was something beyond their comprehension. One by one they fell. Some tried to flee. She let them go. But those who continued to attack, those who tried to kill her, she met with the full force of her unleashed power. When it was over, 25 warriors lay dead or dying in the snow. Another 20 were too injured to stand. Only 5 remained unharmed, and they ran back toward the palace as fast as their legs could carry them. Kira stood in the center of the carnage, her silver fur stained crimson, her chest heaving with each breath. The villagers stared at her in absolute silence. Terror, awe, disbelief, all of it swirled in the air like smoke. And Kira knew that the Alpha King would come for her now, with everything he had. She looked up at the distant mountain, at the black palace that loomed against the red moon, and she made a decision. She would not run. She would not hide. If the king wanted her, he would have to face her himself. What do you think Kira should do next? Should she flee to the wilderness or stand and face whatever comes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In the throne room of the palace, Dante Silvermane received the news in absolute silence. He sat upon his throne of black stone and silver, his massive form radiating power even in stillness. His hair was dark as midnight, his eyes gold as the sun, his presence so commanding that even his strongest warriors trembled before him. He had ruled for 30 years, and in all that time, no one had ever challenged his authority. No one had ever dared. The 5 surviving warriors knelt before him, their heads pressed to the floor, their bodies shaking with fear and shame. Behind them stood the king's council, 7 of the most powerful alphas in the realm, all watching with various expressions of shock and disbelief. "Tell me again," Dante said, his voice quiet and deadly. "Tell me how an Omega destroyed half of your unit." Garrett, the unit leader, spoke with a trembling voice. "She is not a normal Omega, my king. Her wolf is unlike anything we have ever seen. Silver white, large as a beta, fast as the wind itself. She has power that should not exist. We attacked with full force, and she cut through us like we were nothing. I have fought in 100 battles, and I have never seen anything like it." Silence fell across the throne room. The council members exchanged glances. This was impossible. Omegas were weak. That was the foundation of their entire society. The hierarchy was built on strength, and Omegas had none. This could not be real. But the evidence was undeniable. 25 warriors dead, 20 more injured, and 1 small Omega standing victorious. One of the council members stepped forward. His name was Lucius, an old alpha with white hair and cunning eyes. "My king, this cannot be allowed to stand. If word of this spreads, it will destabilize the entire realm. The lower ranks will begin to question the order. There will be chaos. This girl must be hunted down and executed immediately. Send 1,000 warriors. Burn the village where she lives. Make an example so severe that no one will ever dare to defy the hierarchy again." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the council. But Dante remained silent, his golden eyes fixed on something only he could see. His mind was working, calculating, considering possibilities that others could not imagine. "No," he said finally, and his single word carried the weight of absolute authority. "We will not kill her." The room erupted in shocked protests. Lucius stepped forward again, his voice rising. "My king, surely you cannot mean to let her live. She has killed your warriors. She has violated every law we hold sacred. If you show mercy now, it will be seen as weakness." Dante rose from his throne, and every voice fell silent instantly. He descended the steps slowly, his massive form making even the largest alphas look small. He stopped before Garrett, looking down at the kneeling warrior. "You said her power should not exist," Dante said. "Power like hers has not been seen in centuries. The ancient texts speak of wolves who transcended their rank, who held abilities beyond normal comprehension. We thought they were myths, stories to entertain children. But what if they were real? What if this girl carries the bloodline of the ancient ones?" He turned to face his council. If she can defeat 50 warriors alone, imagine what she could do if properly trained. Imagine what she could do if she served the kingdom instead of running from it. We have fought enemies for generations. We have lost thousands of soldiers to wars and battles, but here stands a single wolf with the power of 100. And you want me to throw that away? Lucius shook his head. "She is an Omega, my king. She will never serve you. Her kind is too weak-willed, too broken. And even if she did serve, how could you trust her? She has already shown she will kill anyone who threatens her." Dante smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "Then we will give her a reason not to kill. Bring her to me alive. I do not care what it takes or how many warriors you must send. But she is to be captured, not killed. Anyone who disobeys this command will answer to me personally." He returned to his throne and sat down, his decision final. "Send a message to every pack in the kingdom. Tell them the Alpha King seeks the Omega called Kira. Any pack that harbors her will be destroyed. Any wolf that helps her will be executed. And to the girl herself, send this message. Come to the palace of your own will within 7 days, or I will hunt down every Omega in the realm until you surrender. The choice is yours." The council members bowed, though many wore expressions of doubt and concern, but none would argue further. The king had spoken. As the court dispersed, Dante sat alone on his throne, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon visible through the great windows. Something stirred in his chest, an emotion he had not felt in many years. Anticipation, challenge, interest. This girl had done what no enemy ever had. She had made him curious. And deep in his soul, his wolf stirred and growled with an emotion even stranger. Recognition. As if some part of him knew her, though they had never met. As if fate itself had been waiting for this moment. 7 days. In 7 days, he would meet the Omega who had shaken his kingdom. And then he would discover the truth behind her power, one way or another. News of the king's decree spread across the kingdom like wildfire. In every village, in every den, wolves spoke in hushed voices about the Omega who had defeated 50 warriors. Some called her a monster. Others called her a hero. But everyone knew that her time was running out. Kira stood at the edge of her village, watching the horizon. She had not slept since the battle. Her body was tense, ready, waiting for what she knew must come. The other Omegas had fled the village, terrified that the king's wrath would fall upon them all. She did not blame them. They were innocent in this. She had brought this storm upon herself. An old woman approached from behind, moving slowly with the aid of a walking stick. Her name was Mara, and she had been a healer in the village for 60 years. She had taught Kira everything she knew about herbs and medicines. She was the closest thing to family Kira had ever known. "You should run, child," Mara said softly. "Run far and fast. Leave this kingdom and never return. The Alpha King will not stop hunting you." Kira shook her head. "If I run, he will punish every Omega in the realm. You heard his message. He will burn villages. He will execute innocents. I cannot let that happen because of me. And if you go to him, he will kill you. Perhaps, or perhaps something else will happen. I do not know what this power inside me means, but I know it exists for a reason. I have spent my whole life being afraid, Mara. I have spent every day bowing and scraping and hiding who I am. I am done with fear." Mara reached out and placed a weathered hand on Kira's cheek. "You have always been special, child. From the moment you were born, I knew you were different. Your mother knew it too. That is why she gave you to me before she died. She made me promise to keep you safe, to help you survive. But I always wondered what would happen when your true nature finally emerged." Kira turned to face her, surprise in her eyes. You knew I had this power. I suspected. Your mother was not like other Omegas either. She had strength in her, though she hid it well. She died protecting you from rogues when you were just a baby. She killed 3 of them before she fell, an impossible feat for an Omega. I believe this power runs in your blood, passed down through generations, and now it has awakened in you. Tears filled Kira's eyes. She had never known her mother, had never known anything about her except that she died. Why did she hide it? Why did you never tell me? Because knowledge like that can be more dangerous than ignorance. If the wrong people learned about your bloodline, they would have killed you as a child. But now the secret is out, and you must face what comes next. Just remember this, Kira. Power is neither good nor evil. It is how we choose to use it that defines us. You have the strength to destroy, but you also have the strength to protect. Choose wisely. Mara kissed her forehead and walked away, leaving Kira alone with her thoughts. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of snow and pine. And underneath that, something else, the scent of warriors approaching. They came from the east, a massive force of at least 200 warriors, all in the black and silver armor of the king's personal guard. They moved in perfect formation, disciplined and deadly. At their head rode a female warrior on a massive black wolf. She dismounted as they reached the village edge and shifted into human form. She was tall and muscular, with long dark hair braided down her back and eyes like chips of amber. A beta, clearly, and from her bearing, a high-ranking one. She wore the mark of the king's elite guard on her armor, a silver wolf head over her heart. I am Captain Selene, she announced, her voice carrying across the empty village. I speak with the authority of the Alpha King himself. I seek the Omega known as Kira. Show yourself now, and no harm will come to this place. Resist or flee, and we will burn every building to the ground. Kira stepped forward from the shadows, her chin held high. I am Kira. I will not resist, but I have conditions. Selene's eyes narrowed. You are in no position to make conditions, Omega. Nevertheless, I will make them. I will go with you willingly to face the king. But you will give your word that no harm comes to anyone in this village or any other Omega settlement because of me. I will also go unbound. I will not be treated as a prisoner unless I give you reason. Several warriors growled at her audacity, but Selene raised a hand for silence, studying Kira with an expression that was hard to read. Respect, perhaps, or curiosity. I have heard what you did to Garrett's unit, Selene said. I have heard you possess power beyond your rank. If I agree to your conditions and you come peacefully, will you give your word not to attack my warriors? You have my word, unless they attack me first. Fair enough, Selene turned to her troops. We march to the palace. The Omega comes with us of her own will. Anyone who touches her without cause will answer to me personally. Some of the warriors looked disappointed, but none dared argue with their captain. Selene gestured for Kira to join her at the front of the formation. As they began the long march toward the mountain palace, Selene spoke quietly. I do not understand you, Omega. Most would run rather than face the king's judgment. Why do you go so willingly to what might be your death? Kira looked up at the distant palace, its black towers reaching toward the sky. Because running would solve nothing. Because innocent people would suffer if I did. And because something tells me that the king wants more than just my death. If he wanted me dead, he would have sent 1,000 warriors to kill me in my sleep. Instead, he sends you with orders to bring me alive. That means he has questions, and I have questions too. Selene nodded slowly. You are braver than any Omega I have ever met, perhaps even braver than most warriors. That power you possess, is it true what they say, that you killed 25 soldiers alone? I did not want to kill them, but they gave me no choice. In battle, we rarely have choices. We do what we must to survive. Selene paused, then added, For what it is worth, I hope the king sees your value. You could be a great asset to the kingdom if given the chance. But I warn you now, he is not a merciful wolf. If you defy him, if you challenge his authority in any way, he will destroy you without hesitation. Remember that when you stand before his throne. I will remember, Kira said, but in her heart she felt no fear. only the strange certainty that her meeting with the Alpha King was destined, that whatever happened next, it was meant to be. They marched for 3 days, climbing the mountain roads toward the palace. With each step, Kira felt the weight of destiny growing heavier on her shoulders, and somewhere in the depths of her soul, her wolf stirred restlessly, as if sensing something momentous approaching. The Palace of Silvermane was even more magnificent than the stories claimed. It rose from the mountain peak like a monument to power itself, carved from black stone that seemed to absorb light. Silver veins ran through the walls like frozen lightning, and great towers stretched toward the clouds. Thousands of windows looked out over the kingdom below, and the main gates were massive things of iron and silver, guarded by warriors who looked as if they had been carved from the same stone as the palace. Kira walked between the gates with her head held high, flanked by Captain Selene and 200 warriors. The courtyard inside was vast, filled with training grounds and barracks and fountains of crystal water. Everywhere she looked, she saw wolves, warriors training with weapons, nobles in fine clothing discussing matters of state, servants hurrying about their duties, and every single one of them stopped to stare at her as she passed. The Omega who had killed the king's warriors, the impossible wolf, the girl who had broken nature itself. Whispers followed her like shadows. Some voices held fear, others held hatred, but a very few, held something else. Hope. The faint, desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, the old order could change. Selene led her through the palace corridors, past rooms of gold and silver, past walls covered in ancient tapestries depicting the history of the Wolf Kingdom. Kira saw images of great battles and legendary kings. She saw the founding of Silvermane, when the first Alpha united the scattered packs under one banner. She saw wars against other kingdoms, victories and defeats, glory and tragedy. All of it had led to this moment, to her walking these halls. They reached the throne room at last, and the great doors swung open before them. The room beyond was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to reach to the heavens. Pillars of black stone lined both sides, and at the far end, sitting upon a throne that radiated ancient power, was the Alpha King himself. Dante Silvermane. Even from across the vast room, Kira felt the weight of his presence like a physical force. He was larger than any wolf she had ever seen, his shoulders broad as a mountain, his body radiating strength and dominance. His hair was black as a raven's wing, falling to his shoulders, and his eyes were pure gold, burning with an intensity that seemed to see straight through to her soul. He wore robes of black and silver, and upon his head sat a crown of twisted metal that looked more like a weapon than decoration. The council stood on either side of his throne, 7 ancient alphas who watched her approach with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Warriors lined the walls, at least 100 of them, all ready to strike if she made a single wrong move. Selene knelt before the throne, her fist over her heart. "My king, I have brought the Omega as you commanded. She came willingly and harmed none of my warriors." "You have done well, Captain. You may stand aside." Selene rose and moved to join the other warriors, leaving Kira standing alone in the center of the room. Every eye was on her. Every breath was held. The tension was so thick it could be cut with a blade. Dante rose from his throne and descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing through the chamber. He stopped 10 paces from her, studying her with those burning gold eyes. Kira met his gaze without flinching, without looking away, even though every instinct screamed at her to lower her eyes and submit. She was done submitting. "You are smaller than I expected," Dante said, his voice deep and resonant. "When I heard the stories of the silver wolf who destroyed my warriors, I imagined someone larger, more fearsome. Yet here you stand, looking like any other Omega. If I had not seen the evidence myself, I would think the reports exaggerated." "Size is not the same as strength, Alpha King, and appearances can deceive." A ripple of shock went through the council at her bold words. An Omega addressing the king directly, without permission, without bowing. It was unthinkable. Lucius stepped forward, his face red with anger. "How dare you speak to the king in such a manner? You will show respect, or I will cut out your tongue myself." But Dante raised a hand, silencing the old Alpha. His eyes never left Kira's face. "Let her speak. I want to hear what she has to say. Tell me, Omega, why did you kill my warriors? They were merely following my orders to investigate a disturbance. They came to execute me without trial, without question. They attacked me with intent to kill. I defended myself. If that is a crime, then I am guilty. You are Omega. You have no right to defend yourself against higher ranks. That is the law. Then your law is unjust. The room exploded with outrage. Warriors drew weapons. Council members shouted demands for her immediate execution. But Dante only smiled, a cold, calculating expression that revealed nothing of his thoughts. Unjust, he repeated. You believe you have the right to judge my laws, to declare them unjust. On what authority? Kira took a step forward, her storm-gray eyes blazing. On the authority of truth. Your laws say that Omegas are weak, that we have no power, that we exist only to serve. But I am Omega, and I have power. I have strength. Those laws are built on a lie, and lies are always unjust. Silence fell across the throne room. No one had ever spoken to the king this way. No one had ever dared. The warriors waited for the command to strike her down. The council members trembled with rage. But Dante only continued to smile that cold smile. Interesting, he said softly. You speak of power, Omega. Show me. What? Show me your power. Transform. Let me see this silver wolf that has caused such disruption in my kingdom. Kira hesitated. This could be a trap. Once she revealed her wolf, he could have his warriors attack while she was vulnerable. But she had not come this far to show cowardice now. She took a deep breath and let the power rise within her. The transformation was instantaneous. One moment she stood as a human, small and seemingly fragile. The next, her silver wolf emerged in all its glory, white fur blazing like starlight, size rivaling any beta. Presence radiating power that made even the strongest warriors take a step back. Her storm-gray eyes remained unchanged, staring directly at the king without fear. Gasps echoed through the throne room. Even the council members looked shaken, because what stood before them was not just powerful. It was magnificent. It was legendary. It was something from the ancient times when the first wolves walked the earth and God still spoke to mortals. Dante approached slowly, circling her, examining her from every angle. His expression remained neutral, but Kira could see something burning in his gold eyes. Recognition, understanding, and beneath that hunger, not for violence but for knowledge, for truth. Remarkable, he said at last. You carry the bloodline of the ancient ones, the silver wolves of legend. I thought they were extinct, wiped out centuries ago in the Great Purge. Yet here you stand, living proof that their power survived. He stopped directly in front of her, so close she could feel the heat of his body. You are right, Omega. My laws are built on a lie. Not all Omegas are weak. But you are the first I have seen in 30 years of rule who proves otherwise, which raises a question. What am I to do with you? Lucius stepped forward again. Kill her, my king. She is an anomaly, a freak of nature. She threatens everything we have built. But Dante shook his head. No, killing her would be a waste. Instead, I will make you an offer, Kira of the Silver Wolves. Swear loyalty to me. Serve in my guard. Help me protect this kingdom from its enemies. Do this, and I will change the laws. I will make it so that Omegas with power can rise in rank, can claim their true strength. You will be the first, the example for all others to follow. Kira shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed before the assembled court. Someone threw her a cloak, which she wrapped around herself before responding. And if I refuse? Then you will be executed as a traitor, and the old laws will remain unchanged. Every Omega in this kingdom will continue to suffer under the weight of injustice. The choice is yours. It was a clever trap, except, and she became his tool. Refuse, and she proved herself a selfish rebel who cared more for pride than for her own people. Either way, he won. Unless she found a third option. I will make you a counteroffer, Alpha King, she said, her voice steady. I will serve you for 1 year. In that time, I will prove my worth. I will fight your battles and protect your kingdom. But in return, you will not just change the laws. You will let me train other Omegas who have hidden power. You will let me build an order of warriors drawn from the lowest ranks. And at the end of that year, if I have fulfilled my service, you will grant me freedom to leave if I choose. Do we have accord?" The council erupted again, but Dante raised his hand for silence. He studied her for a long moment, his golden eyes burning into hers. Then, slowly, he began to laugh. It was not mockery, but genuine amusement mixed with something like respect. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Omega. Perhaps both. Very well, I accept your counter-offer, 1 year of service. In that time you will have my full support to find and train others like yourself. But know this. If you betray me, if you turn your power against this kingdom, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth and I will destroy everything you love. Are we understood?" "Understood, Alpha King." "Then kneel, Kira of the Silver Wolves. Swear your oath before my court." Kira knelt, though every fiber of her being rebelled against the act. She placed her fist over her heart and spoke the ancient words. "I, Kira, born of the Omega rank, do swear to serve King Dante Silvermane for 1 year. I pledge my strength to his kingdom, my claws to his enemies, my loyalty to his throne. This I swear under the light of the moon and the eyes of the ancestors. May my blood pay the price if I break this vow." Power surged through the room as the oath took hold, binding her words with magic older than the kingdom itself. And as she rose, meeting Dante's eyes once more, she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not just respect or interest, but recognition on a deeper level, as if his wolf knew hers, as if fate had tied them together long before this moment. "Welcome to my service, Kira," Dante said softly. "Let us see if you survive it." The barracks assigned to Kira were simple but comfortable, far better than anything she had known as a village Omega. A bed with clean linens, a chest for belongings she did not possess, a window that looked out over the training grounds where warriors practiced from dawn to dusk. She stood at that window now, watching the sun rise over the mountains, knowing her new life was about to begin in earnest. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Captain Cellini entered without waiting for permission, her amber eyes sharp and assessing. "The king has assigned you to my unit for training. We begin in 1 hour. Wear these." She tossed a bundle of black leather onto the bed. Kira picked it up and found training clothes similar to what the other warriors wore, though without any rank insignia. When she put them on, she was surprised to find they fit perfectly, tailored specifically for her smaller frame. "The king had them made for you overnight," Cellini said, reading her expression. "He may be ruthless, but he keeps his word. You are to be trained as a warrior, and warriors must have proper equipment. Now come, the others are waiting." The training ground was massive, divided into different sections for various forms of combat. Hand-to-hand fighting in one area, weapons training in another, wolf forms sparring in a third. At least 200 warriors were present, all going through their morning routines with disciplined precision. Cellini led Kira to the center of the main ring, where a crowd had already gathered. Among them, Kira recognized some faces from the throne room, council members, high-ranking warriors, and there, standing at the edge of the crowd, was the king himself, arms crossed over his chest, watching with those penetrating gold eyes. "This is Kira," Cellini announced to the assembled warriors. "By order of the king, she has been granted the right to train among us despite her Omega rank. Any warrior who wishes to test her skills may challenge her now. Who will be first?" Silence fell across the gathering. The warriors looked at each other, uncertain. To fight an Omega was beneath their dignity, but to refuse a direct invitation from their captain would be seen as cowardice. Finally, a young beta warrior stepped forward, his face set with determination. "I will test her, Captain. Let us see if the stories are true." His name was Marcus, and he was newly promoted to the King's Guard, eager to prove himself. He entered the ring with confidence, his movements showing good training and natural ability. But when he looked at Kira, his eyes held contempt. An Omega did not belong here, his expression said clearly. She was an aberration that needed to be put in her place. "Standard rules," Cellini called out. "First to yield or be pinned loses, no lethal force, begin." Marcus attacked immediately, thinking to overwhelm her with speed and strength. He was fast, Kira had to admit. His strikes were well placed, his defense solid. Under normal circumstances, he would have been a challenging opponent. But these were not normal circumstances. Kira moved like water, flowing around his attacks, never where he expected her to be. When he struck, she was already gone. When he tried to grab her, his hands closed on empty air. She did not counter-attack yet, simply evaded, letting him exhaust himself while she learned his patterns. "Stand still and fight," Marcus growled, his frustration growing. "Why? You cannot hit a moving target. Perhaps you need more training." His face flushed red with anger. He abandoned technique for raw aggression, throwing powerful but clumsy strikes. Kira waited for her opening, then struck. A quick sweep took his legs out from under him. Before he could recover, she had him pinned to the ground, her knee on his chest, her hand at his throat. "Yield," she said softly. Marcus stared up at her in shock, unable to believe an Omega had bested him so easily. Around the ring, the watching warriors murmured in surprise. Selene called the match, and Kira released him, offering a hand to help him up. After a moment's hesitation, he took it. "Again," someone called from the crowd. "That could have been luck. Let us see her fight again." Another warrior stepped forward, then another, then another. For the next 3 hours, Kira faced challenge after challenge. Some warriors fought with honor, testing her skills fairly. Others fought with anger, trying to hurt her to prove she did not belong. But none of them could defeat her. Her speed was too great, her reflexes too sharp, her power too overwhelming. By the time the sun reached its peak, she had defeated 27 warriors without a single loss. She stood in the center of the ring, breathing hard but still standing, while her opponents nursed their bruises and wounded pride. The king stepped forward at last, and the crowd parted before him like water before a ship. He entered the ring, his presence making even the bravest warriors step back. "You have proven yourself against my warriors, Kira. Now prove yourself against me." The crowd gasped. The king himself entering the ring to fight an Omega. It was unheard of. Dante removed his robe, revealing a body carved from muscle and scars. He had fought 1,000 battles and won them all. He was the strongest wolf in the kingdom, perhaps the strongest in all the known world. Kira knew she could not defeat him, but she would not surrender without trying. "As you wish, my king." They circled each other slowly, predator and predator, 2 apex wolves testing the waters. Dante moved first, and his speed was shocking. In a blink, he was upon her, forcing her to dive aside to avoid his strike. She rolled and came up ready, but he was already there, his hand closing around her wrist. She twisted out of his grip using a technique Mara had taught her years ago, then countered with a strike aimed at his ribs. But he blocked it effortlessly, his other hand snaking out to catch her by the throat. Not choking, just holding, demonstrating his complete control. "You are quick," he said, his voice low and intimate despite the crowd watching. "But speed alone will not save you against superior strength. Again." He released her and they resumed. Again and again they clashed, and each time Dante demonstrated why he was king. He was faster than he looked, stronger than seemed possible. His technique was flawless, honed by decades of combat. But more than that, he fought with an intelligence that anticipated her every move. Yet Kira did not give up. Every time he knocked her down, she got back up. Every time he demonstrated his superiority, she adapted and tried a new approach. She could not win, but she could learn. And she could show him that she would never simply submit. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, Dante pinned her to the ground with his body, his hand at her throat once more. Their faces were inches apart, both breathing hard from the exertion. His gold eyes bored into hers, and for a moment something passed between them. Recognition. Respect. And beneath that, something neither of them wanted to acknowledge. "You have courage," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "And you learn quickly. I can see why my warriors fell before you. But remember this, Kira. I am not my warriors. I am the Alpha King. Cross me, and courage will not save you." "I will remember, my king." He released her and stood, offering his hand. She took it, letting him pull her to her feet. The watching crowd burst into cheers, impressed despite themselves. An Omega who could last even a few minutes against the king was remarkable. That she had lasted as long as she did was extraordinary. Selene approached, a small smile on her usually stern face. "You did well, Omega, better than I expected. Tomorrow we begin your real training. Today was just a test. Rest now, you will need your strength." As the crowd dispersed, Kira found herself alone with her thoughts once more. She had passed the first trial, but she knew there would be many more to come. The council members who hated her, the warriors who resented her presence, the old laws and older prejudices that would not change easily. And most challenging of all, the king himself, Dante Silvermane, who held her fate in his hands, who had given her a chance but could destroy her at any moment, who looked at her with eyes that saw too much and promised nothing. She touched her throat where his hand had rested, feeling the ghost of his warmth. This was going to be more complicated than she had imagined, much more complicated indeed. 3 months passed in a blur of training and trials. Kira rose before dawn each day to train with Selene's unit, learning weapons and tactics, practicing formations and strategies. She trained in human form and wolf form, mastering the transition between them until it was as natural as breathing. She studied the history of the kingdom, the politics of the court, the customs and laws that governed their world. And slowly, grudgingly, the warriors began to accept her presence. Not all of them. Some still saw her as an abomination, a violation of natural order. But enough had fought beside her in training, had seen her courage and skill firsthand, that respect began to outweigh prejudice. When Captain Selene formally promoted her to the rank of Beta Warrior, the ceremony was attended by hundreds, and only a few protests were raised. But acceptance among the warriors was only the beginning. Kira had made a deal with the king, and she intended to fulfill it. She began searching for others like herself, Omegas who had hidden power, who had spent their lives pretending to be weak when strength burned within them. The first she found was a young man named Finn, barely 18, who worked in the palace kitchens. Kira had noticed him lifting massive iron pots that should have required 2 Omegas to move. When she confronted him privately, he broke down in tears, confessing that he had always been stronger than he should be, that he lived in constant fear of discovery. The second was a woman named Lyra, who served as a seamstress in the nobles' quarters. Kira had seen her eyes flash gold during an argument with another servant, a sure sign of wolf power trying to break free. Lyra admitted she could hear conversations from 3 rooms away and could track scents better than most warriors. Within 2 months, Kira had identified 12 Omegas with hidden abilities. She brought them before the king, and true to his word, Dante gave them the chance to train. It was not easy. The council protested violently. Many nobles were outraged at the idea of their servants learning combat. But the king's word was law, and slowly, painfully, the Order of Silver began to form. Kira led the training herself, teaching them not just how to fight, but how to embrace their power without fear. She taught them that strength was nothing to be ashamed of, that they had every right to claim their true nature. Some struggled with the lessons, too broken by years of submission to easily shed their chains. Others flourished, their abilities growing stronger with each passing day. But not everyone in the palace was pleased with these developments. One evening, as Kira made her way through the corridors to her quarters, she sensed movement in the shadows. 3 figures stepped out to block her path, all wearing the robes of council members. Lucius stood in the center, his white hair gleaming in the torchlight, his eyes cold as winter ice. "You have gone too far, Omega," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "The king may be fooled by your tricks, but we are not. You are destabilizing the entire kingdom with your rebellious ideas." "I am following the king's direct orders," Kira replied calmly. "If you have a problem with that, take it up with him. The king is distracted by your novelty. He does not see the danger you represent, but we see it clearly. You are teaching Omegas to believe they can be equal to their betters. You are planting seeds of rebellion that will grow into civil war. I am teaching wolves to embrace their truth. If that truth threatens your power, perhaps your power was built on lies in the first place." Lucius's face turned red with rage. "You dare to lecture me about power? I have served this kingdom for 40 years. I was fighting battles when you were not even born. And now I am supposed to bow to an Omega whelp who got lucky in a fight. I never asked you to bow. I only ask that you follow your king's commands. The king is making a mistake, and when he realizes it, he will thank us for correcting it. Kira's eyes narrowed. What are you saying, Lucius? I am saying that accidents happen. Warriors die in training all the time. A slip of the blade, a fall from a great height, a sudden attack by rogues. Such tragedies could befall you and your little order at any moment. And who could say it was not simply misfortune? It was a threat, clear and direct. Kira felt anger surge within her, her wolf rising to meet the challenge. But she forced it down, keeping her voice level. Threaten me again, counselor, and I will take this matter directly to the king. I wonder what he would say about his council plotting against his direct orders. And I wonder what he would say if we told him you have been meeting in secret with your Omegas, planning who knows what in the dead of night. I wonder what he would think of the whispered conversations, the coded messages, the growing loyalty you command among the lowest ranks. It looks very much like conspiracy, does it not? Kira's blood ran cold. They had been watching her, twisting her innocent actions into something sinister. If they took these accusations to Dante, even with no proof, it would plant seeds of doubt. The king had accepted her, but trust was fragile. One misstep, and everything she had built would crumble. Before she could respond, a deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. Is there a problem here, counselor? Everyone turned to see King Dante himself approaching from the far end of the corridor. He moved with fluid grace despite his massive size, his gold eyes taking in the scene with cold assessment. The council members immediately bowed, but Kira could see the flash of fear in their eyes. No problem, my king, Lucius said smoothly. We were merely having a discussion with your new warrior about her training methods. A discussion that required 3 council members to corner her in an empty hallway. How curious. Dante stopped before them, his presence radiating power. Kira, are these men threatening you? She could lie, could smooth things over, but she had spent her life hiding the truth, and she was done with that. Yes, my king, they were. The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante's expression did not change, but something in his eyes turned deadly. I see. Counselors, you will explain yourselves. Now. Lucius tried to maintain his composure. My king, we only seek to protect your throne. This Omega and her followers represent a potential danger to the kingdom's stability. We were simply expressing our concerns. Your concerns are noted, but let me make something absolutely clear. Dante's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Kira serves by my direct command. Her order trains under my explicit permission. Any action taken against her or her students is an action taken against me personally. If any harm befalls them, I will hold the entire council responsible. Do you understand? But my king, do you understand? The 3 council members swallowed hard. Yes, my king, we understand. Good, now leave us, and consider carefully whether your positions on the council are worth more than your prejudices. The council members fled, practically running down the corridor in their haste to escape the king's wrath. Dante watched them go, then turned to Kira, his expression softening slightly. Are you unharmed? I am, my king. Thank you for your intervention. Do not thank me yet. Walk with me. We need to talk. He set off down the corridor, and Kira fell into step beside him, her mind racing with questions. They walked in silence through the palace until they reached a set of doors that led out onto a high balcony. The view from here was breathtaking, the entire kingdom spread out below them under a canopy of stars. Dante leaned against the railing, his gaze on the distant horizon. The council is right about one thing, Kira. What you are doing is dangerous. Not because your order will rebel, but because you are changing the fundamental structure of our society. That kind of change always creates enemies. I know, but some changes are necessary. Perhaps, but you must be careful. I can protect you from overt threats like Lucius and his cronies, but I cannot protect you from every knife in the dark, every whispered conspiracy. You have made powerful enemies, and they will not stop simply because I command it. Are you asking me to stop training the Omegas? No, I am asking you to be smart about it. Watch your back. Trust no one completely, not even those who seem loyal. And if you sense real danger, come to me immediately. He turned to face her, his gold eyes searching hers. I did not bring you here just to watch you die in some pointless assassination. Something in his tone made her breath catch. There was concern there, genuine and deep. Not the concern of a king for a useful tool, but something more personal. Something that should not exist between an alpha king and an omega warrior. Why did you bring me here, my king? You could have executed me. You could have made me a prisoner. Instead, you gave me power and authority. Why? Dante was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. Do you believe in destiny, Kira? I do not know, perhaps. I did not. For 30 years, I have ruled this kingdom through strength and will. I have never believed in fate or prophecy or the whispers of the ancestors. I believed only in power. But then you appeared, an omega who should not exist, a silver wolf from legends long dead. And when I first saw you standing defiant in my throne room, something in me recognized you. My wolf knew you, even though we had never met. He reached out and gently tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. I do not understand it, I do not like it, but I cannot deny it. You are important, Kira, not just to the kingdom, to me, and that terrifies me more than any enemy ever has. Kira's heart pounded in her chest. She should pull away, should remind him of the distance that must exist between king and subject, between Alpha and Omega. But she could not move, could not speak, because she felt it too, that connection, that recognition. What does this mean? She whispered. I do not know, but we will find out, together. He released her and stepped back, the moment broken. Go now, rest. Tomorrow there is a mission I need you for. A pack of rogues has been attacking villages on the western border. I want you to lead a unit to eliminate them. It will be your first true test as a warrior in my service. I will not fail you, my king. I know you will not. That is why I am sending you. As Kira made her way back to her quarters, her mind whirled with confusion and possibility. The king's words echoed in her thoughts. Destiny, recognition, importance. What did it all mean, and where would it lead? She did not know, but for the first time since this journey began, she felt something like hope. Perhaps she could change this kingdom. Perhaps she could make a difference. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had found an ally in the last place she ever expected. In the king himself. The western border was 3 days' hard march from the palace, through dense forests and over treacherous mountain passes. Kira led a unit of 20 warriors, including 5 members of her Omega Order who had progressed enough in their training to see real combat. Captain Cellini rode at her side, technically there to observe, but clearly ready to take command if Kira proved incapable of leadership. The attacked villages painted a grim picture. Buildings burned to the ground, fields destroyed, bodies scattered like leaves after a storm. The rogues were not just hunting for food or territory. They were killing for sport, for pleasure, for the simple joy of causing pain. It made Kira's blood boil. These are not normal rogues, Cellini observed as they examined the latest attack site. Normal rogues are disorganized, desperate. These attacks show planning, coordination. Someone is leading them. Kira nodded, studying the tracks in the snow. At least 30 rogues had hit this village, moving in formation, striking key points simultaneously. We need to find their base, stop them before they attack again. One of her Omega warriors, young Finn, knelt beside a particularly deep set of tracks. His enhanced senses had proven invaluable during the journey. The trail leads north into the deep forest, but there is something strange about the scent. It is not just rogue. There is something else mixed in, something I cannot identify. They followed the trail for half a day, moving carefully through the snow-covered forest. As the sun began to set, Finn raised his hand for a halt. I smell them. A large group, maybe a mile ahead. They have made camp for the night. Kira gathered her warriors around her, speaking in low tones. We have 2 options. Attack now while they rest, or wait until dawn and catch them as they wake. What do you think? Cellini frowned. Standard tactics would say attack at dawn, But if they are as organized as they seem, they will have sentries. We might lose the element of surprise. Then we go now, hard and fast. Finn, Lyra, use your enhanced senses to locate the sentries. Take them out silently. The rest of us will circle around and hit them from multiple sides at once. Our goal is to eliminate the threat and capture their leader if possible. The king wants answers about who is organizing these attacks. The warriors nodded, their faces grim but determined. They moved through the forest like ghosts, silent and deadly. Finn and Lyra disappeared ahead, returning minutes later to report that 4 sentries had been neutralized. The path was clear. Kira positioned her forces carefully, splitting them into 3 groups to attack from different directions. She took the center group herself, 5 of her best fighters. At her signal, they would strike as one, overwhelming the rogues before they could mount a defense. But as they crept into position, Kira's instinct screamed a warning. Something was wrong. The camp was too quiet, too still. She raised her hand to signal a halt, but before she could act, the forest exploded with movement. Rogues poured from the shadows on all sides, dozens of them, far more than they had scented. It was a trap. They had been expected. The rogues had laid a counter-ambush, using their own camp as bait. "Formation," Kira roared, her wolf surging forward. "Back to back, defend each other." Chaos erupted in the snowy forest. The rogues attacked with savage ferocity, their eyes wild and mad, foam dripping from their jaws. But Kira's warriors held their ground, fighting with the discipline and skill of trained soldiers. Her Omega students proved their worth, using their unique abilities to turn the tide in small pockets of combat. Finn's strength allowed him to grab rogues and throw them into trees with bone-shattering force. Lyra's enhanced hearing warned her of attacks before they came, making her nearly impossible to hit. Another Omega named Petra could move so fast she seemed to blur, her claws cutting down rogues before they even realized she had moved. Kira fought in the center of it all, her silver wolf blazing like a beacon in the darkness. She moved through the rogues like death itself, her claws and teeth finding vital points with surgical precision. She did not waste energy on flashy moves or unnecessary violence. Each strike was calculated, efficient, lethal. But there were so many of them, and they kept coming. Then she saw him. Standing at the edge of the clearing, watching the battle with cold calculation, was a wolf unlike any rogue she had ever seen. He was massive, nearly as large as the king himself, with midnight black fur and eyes that gleamed with terrible intelligence. This was no mindless beast. This was the leader. Kira broke away from the main combat and charged straight for him, trusting her warriors to hold the line without her. The black wolf saw her coming and smiled, an expression that looked wrong on a wolf's face. They collided with the force of an avalanche, claws and teeth seeking purchase, neither giving ground. He was strong, she realized immediately. Stronger than any rogue had a right to be. His movements were skilled, trained, not the wild flailing of a feral creature. He had been a warrior once, perhaps a high-ranking one. But something had happened to him, something that turned him into this. They broke apart, circling each other. The black wolf shifted into human form, revealing a man in his 40s with scars covering his body and madness burning in his eyes. "So you are the famous Silver Wolf, the Omega who thinks she can rise above her station, the king's new pet." "Who are you?" Kira demanded, remaining in wolf form. "I was called Victor. Once I served in the king's guard. I was a captain, honored and respected. But then I disagreed with the king's policies. I spoke out against his tyranny, and for that crime I was stripped of my rank and exiled to die in the wilderness." "So you turned rogue and began slaughtering innocents. That is your revenge." "These villages serve the king. They feed his army, they pay his taxes, they are complicit in his oppression. I am simply showing them the cost of their loyalty." Victor's eyes gleamed with fanatic zeal. "But you, little Omega, you are different. The king gave you what he denied me. Power, status, recognition. And you took it like a dog begging for scraps from its master's table." "I took nothing. I earned my place through strength and courage, and I used that place to help others rise, not to tear them down." "Lies. You serve a tyrant. You enforce his will. You are worse than him because you pretend to care about the lower ranks while kneeling before their oppressor. Victor shifted back into his wolf form. But it ends tonight. I will kill you, then I will kill every warrior in your unit. And when your bodies are found, the kingdom will know that the king's pet Omega died like a dog in the snow. They clashed again. And this time Victor did not hold back. He fought with the skill of a veteran warrior combined with the savage fury of a rogue. His claws tore through her defenses. His teeth found her shoulder, drawing first blood. Pain exploded through Kira's body, but she used it, channeling it into power. She twisted out of his grip and countered with a strike to his ribs that cracked bone. Victor howled in pain but did not slow. They traded blows, each landing devastating hits, both refusing to fall. The snow around them turned red with their blood. But Kira had something Victor did not. She had purpose beyond revenge. She fought not for herself, but for the warriors depending on her. For the Omegas who looked to her as a symbol of hope. For the future she was trying to build. That purpose gave her strength when her body wanted to fail. She saw her opening when Victor overextended on a strike. His left side was exposed for just a fraction of a second. It was enough. Kira's jaws closed on his throat, her teeth finding the artery. Victor's eyes widened in shock as his lifeblood poured out into the snow. This is not oppression, Kira said, shifting to human form but keeping her teeth at his throat. This is justice for the innocents you murdered, justice for the villages you destroyed. You could have fought the king directly if you truly believed he was a tyrant. Instead, you attacked those who could not defend themselves. You are no revolutionary. You are a coward. Victor tried to speak, but only blood came out. His eyes glazed over and he went still. Kira released him and stood, her body screaming with pain from a dozen wounds. Around her, the last of the rogues were being cut down. Her warriors had held the line. They had won. But the cost had been high. 3 of her warriors lay dead in the snow. 5 more were badly injured, and Kira herself could barely stand. Selene rushed to her side, her face pale with concern. You need healing, now. The wounded first, I can wait. Like hell you can. You are bleeding from 6 different wounds. If you do not get treatment immediately, you will die before we make it back to the palace. Kira wanted to argue, but her legs gave out beneath her. Selene caught her before she hit the ground, calling for the healers. As consciousness began to fade, Kira's last thought was of the king. She had completed his mission. She had eliminated the threat. She hoped he would consider her service satisfactory. Then darkness took her, and she knew nothing more. Kira woke to find herself in the palace healing ward, sunlight streaming through tall windows, warming her face. Her body ached with every breath, but the sharp agony of her wounds had faded to a dull throb. Someone had cleaned and bandaged her injuries, and the scent of healing herbs filled the air. You are finally awake. Good. Any longer and I was going to pour cold water on your face. She turned her head to see Captain Selene sitting in a chair beside her bed, arms crossed, expression stern but eyes showing relief. How long have I been unconscious? 4 days. The healers said you lost enough blood to kill 3 wolves, but your body healed faster than they expected. Another gift of your ancient bloodline, apparently. 4 days. Kira tried to sit up and immediately regretted it as pain lanced through her ribs. Selene pressed her back down with surprising gentleness. Easy. You may heal fast, but you are still injured. Give it another day or 2 before you try to fight anyone. My warriors, the wounded, did they survive? All of them. You got the healers to them in time. 3 dead is a heavy loss, but it could have been much worse. You led well, Kira. The survivors are already telling stories of your battle with the rogue leader. They say you fought like one of the ancient warrior queens from legend. Kira closed her eyes, grief washing over her for the 3 who had not made it home. She had led them into battle. Their deaths were her responsibility. I should have seen the trap sooner. I should have been more careful. You did everything right. Victor was a skilled tactician. He knew how to hide his numbers, how to set an ambush. Anyone else would have lost the entire unit. You saved 17 lives through your leadership and combat skill. That is what matters. Does the king know about the mission? Seleni's expression shifted, becoming unreadable. He knows. In fact, he has not left the palace healing ward since you were brought here. He has been waiting for you to wake. Kira's eyes widened in shock. What? Why would the king personally watch over me? Why do you think? He cares about you, Omega. More than is wise for a king to care about anyone. I have served Dante for 15 years, and I have never seen him like this. When we brought you back barely alive, I thought he was going to kill everyone in the room for failing to protect you better. Before Kira could respond, the door opened and Dante himself entered. He wore simple robes instead of his royal regalia, and his face looked haggard, as if he had not slept in days. When he saw Kira awake and alert, relief flooded his features so intensely it took her breath away. "Leave us," he said to Selene, not taking his eyes off Kira. Selene bowed and exited quickly, closing the door behind her. Silence filled the room, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Dante crossed to her bedside and sat in the chair Selene had vacated. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, his gold eyes searching her face as if memorizing every detail. "You are an idiot," he said at last, his voice rough with emotion. "Taking on a trained warrior captain alone, nearly dying in some frozen forest because you were too stubborn to call for help. Do you have any idea what could have happened if your body had not healed as fast as it did? I completed the mission, my king. The rogues are eliminated. The villages are safe." "I do not care about the mission." He surged to his feet, packing like a caged animal. "I care about you, you infuriating, impossible woman. When Selene brought you back covered in blood, barely breathing, I thought I had lost you. And I realized in that moment that I cannot afford to lose you. Not now, not ever." Kira stared at him, her heart racing. "My king, what are you saying?" He stopped packing and looked at her, his expression raw and vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. "I am saying that you were right that day on the balcony. Destiny is real. Fate is real. Because there is no other explanation for what I feel when I look at you. You are not just important to the kingdom. You are important to me. You are mine, Kira, my warrior, my equal, my mate." The word hung in the air between them like thunder. Mate. The sacred bond between two wolves, deeper than marriage, more binding than any oath. It could not be forced or faked. It simply existed, chosen by the moon herself, written into the very souls of those destined to be together. "That is impossible," Kira whispered, though her heart knew the truth. "You are the Alpha King, I am Omega. Such a bond cannot exist between ranks so far apart." "And yet it does. I feel it every time I am near you. My wolf recognizes your wolf. Your scent calls to something primal in me. When you were dying, I felt it like a wound in my own chest. We are mates, Kira. The moon has chosen, and we cannot fight it." Tears filled Kira's eyes. Part joy, part terror, part overwhelming confusion. If this is true, if we are truly mates, it will tear the kingdom apart. The council will never accept it. The nobles will riot. You will lose everything. "Then I will lose everything." He knelt beside her bed, taking her hand in his much larger ones. "I have been king for 30 years. I have fought wars and won victories. I have built an empire through strength and will, but none of it means anything if I cannot have you. You are the only thing that has ever made me feel alive, Kira. The only thing I have ever wanted that I could not simply take." Why me? Why now after all these years?" "Because you are the first person who ever stood before me without fear. The first who challenged me, defied me, matched me. You are my equal in every way that matters, and I will not let rank or tradition or the opinions of small-minded fools keep us apart." Kira reached up with her free hand and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble on his jaw, the warmth of his skin. "If we do this, we change everything. The old order will crumble. There will be chaos." "Good, the old order is built on lies and injustice. Let it crumble. We will build something better in its place, together." He leaned forward, his forehead touching hers. "Say yes, Kira, accept the bond, be my mate, my queen, my equal. Help me change this kingdom into something worthy of you." She should refuse, should think of all the logical reasons why this was a terrible idea, should consider the consequences and the challenges and the inevitable backlash. But her heart knew its own truth. She had felt the bond from the moment they met, had fought against it because it seemed impossible. But fighting fate was like trying to stop the tide, useless and exhausting. "Yes," she whispered. "I accept the bond. I am yours and you are mine." The moment she spoke the words, power surged through the room like lightning. The mating bond snapped into place, connecting their souls with chains stronger than steel, gentler than silk. Kira gasped as she felt Dante's emotions flooding through the link. His relief, his joy, his fierce protectiveness, his absolute devotion. And underneath it all, a love so deep and consuming it took her breath away. Dante kissed her then, gentle despite his size and strength, reverent as if she were something precious and sacred. And through the bond, she felt his wolf singing with hers, a harmony that resonated in her very bones. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, both marked by the bond in ways visible only to each other. The golden thread that now connected their souls, tying their fates together for all time. "What happens now?" Kira asked, still dazed by the intensity of the bond. "Now we tell the kingdom, we announce the mating bond and weather whatever storm follows. But first, you heal. And then we plan, because changing a kingdom is not accomplished in a day." He smiled, and it transformed his usually stern face into something beautiful. "But we have time, a lifetime if the moon is kind, and I intend to use every moment of it." Over the next week, as Kira recovered her strength, they planned their announcement carefully. Dante called a grand council, summoning every alpha, every noble, every warrior of rank to the palace. The throne room was packed with hundreds of wolves, all curious about why the king had called such an unprecedented gathering. When Kira entered the throne room, walking at Dante's side rather than behind him, whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. She wore robes of silver and white, marking her new status, though she also wore her warrior's leathers underneath. She was queen now, but she would always be a fighter first. Dante stood before his throne and addressed the assembled court, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive room. "I have gathered you here to announce a change that will reshape our kingdom. The Omega warrior Kira, who has served with honor and distinction, is my mate. The moon has chosen our bond, and I have accepted it. She will be my queen, my equal in all things, and with her at my side, we will rewrite the laws of this realm." The throne room erupted in chaos. Shouts of outrage, cries of disbelief. Lucius and his faction of conservative council members looked as if they might have heart attacks. But there were other voices too. Cheers from the Omega sections. Applause from some of the younger warriors who had trained with Kira. Support from those who had seen her courage and strength firsthand. Dante raised his hand for silence, and gradually the noise subsided. "I know this challenges everything you have been taught. I know it violates traditions that have stood for centuries. But those traditions were built on a false premise. Not all Omegas are weak. Not all strength comes from birth rank. Kira has proven that truth with her actions. And now, together, we will build a kingdom where power is earned through merit, not granted by accident of birth." Lucius stepped forward, his face red with fury. "This is an abomination. The king has lost his mind, bewitched by an Omega's tricks. We cannot allow this. The council must intervene." But before he could say more, one of the other council members, a younger alpha named Marcus who had always been more progressive, spoke up. "The king is not bewitched. I have watched this Omega train and fight. I have seen her defeat warriors who have trained their entire lives. If the moon has chosen her as the king's mate, who are we to question? The moon is wiser than any of us." Other voices joined in support. Not a majority, but enough to show that Kira had allies beyond just Dante. The tide was shifting, slowly but surely. Dante looked out over his court with the confidence of a king who had never lost a battle. The mating bond is sealed. It cannot be broken by council vote or noble protest. This is the new reality. You can accept it and help us build a better kingdom, or you can resist and be left behind. The choice is yours. But know this, I will not tolerate any action taken against my mate. She is under my personal protection. To harm her is to declare war on me personally. Am I understood? Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Even Lucius, for all his fury, was not foolish enough to threaten the king directly. Slowly, reluctantly, the council members bowed. The nobles followed. The warriors saluted. One by one, the entire court acknowledged the new queen, even those who hated the very idea of her. And Kira stood tall beside her mate, her king, her equal, ready to face whatever came next. Because she had learned the truth about power. It was not given by others. It was claimed by those brave enough to reach for it. And she had claimed not just her own power, but a throne beside the most powerful wolf in the kingdom. The old order was dead. Long live the new. 6 months passed, and the kingdom transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The laws changed first, as Dante had promised. Omegas with proven power were given the right to test for higher ranks. The Order of Silver expanded to 50 members, all trained warriors who served with distinction. Villages that had once trembled at the approach of royal warriors now cheered when Kira's silver wolves arrived, knowing they brought protection and justice rather than oppression. But change never comes without resistance. There were attempts on Kira's life, assassination plots organized by nobles who refused to accept the new order. Each attempt failed, thwarted by Kira's abilities, by Dante's vigilance, by the growing number of wolves who had come to respect and love their new queen. Lucius and his faction grew increasingly desperate, their power eroding as more and more wolves embraced the changes. They whispered in dark corners, plotted in secret chambers, searched for any weakness they could exploit. And finally, they found what they thought was their opportunity. On a cold winter morning, as Kira trained with her order in the palace courtyard, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A village on the eastern border was under attack by a massive force of rogues, larger than anything seen in decades. The king was away inspecting the northern territories, 3 days' travel from the palace. If help did not arrive within hours, the village would be destroyed. Kira did not hesitate. She gathered every available warrior, nearly 300 soldiers including her entire Order of Silver, and marched east at top speed. They reached the village by nightfall to find it under siege by at least 500 rogues, a massive horde that should not have been possible to organize. As Kira surveyed the situation, her instinct screamed warnings. This felt wrong, too convenient, too perfectly timed, but the villagers needed help and she could not abandon them because of suspicion. "We attack at dawn," she announced to her commanders. "Hit them from multiple sides, break their formation, scatter them into the forest where we can hunt them down in smaller groups. Selene, take the left flank. Finn, you have the right, I will lead the center charge." But Selene grabbed her arm, her amber eyes worried. "This feels like a trap, Kira. We should wait for the king to return with reinforcements." "The village will not survive that long. We move at first light." They positioned their forces through the night, and as the sun began to rise, Kira gave the signal. Her warriors charged with disciplined fury, crashing into the rogue horde like a tidal wave. The battle was fierce and bloody, but Kira's forces had training and coordination on their side. They began to push the rogues back, cutting through their numbers with devastating efficiency. Then the trap was sprung. From the forest behind the village poured another force, not rogues, but armored warriors wearing colors Kira recognized with shock and horror. They were soldiers from the southern kingdoms, ancient enemies of Silvermane who had not dared attack in generations. And leading them was a familiar figure in council robes. "Lucius." "Traitor," Kira roared, fury burning through her veins. "You sold out your own kingdom to foreign enemies." Lucius smiled coldly from his position of safety. "I saved my kingdom from an abomination. You corrupted our king, destroyed our traditions, threatened everything we have built. Better to ally with enemies than to let you continue your pollution of our society. When you and your mongrel order are dead, the king will come to his senses. And if he does not, well, the southern kingdoms will be happy to install a more reasonable ruler." The southern forces crashed into Kira's rear ranks, catching them between two armies. The situation turned desperate in an instant. Kira's warriors fought with everything they had, but they were outnumbered 3-1, surrounded and being cut down despite their skill. "Retreat," Kira called out. "Fall back to the forest, we can lose them in the trees." But even as she gave the order, she knew many would not make it. Her warriors were being slaughtered. Her order was being destroyed. Everything she had built, all the hope she had brought to the Omegas, it was all crumbling in the blood-stained snow. She would not let that happen. Power surged within her, the ancient strength of her bloodline rising to meet this desperate moment. Her transformation was like a thunderclap, her silver wolf erupting into being larger and more magnificent than ever before. The mating bond with Dante had enhanced her abilities, made her stronger, faster, more powerful. She was no longer just a skilled warrior. She was something approaching legend. "Order of Silver," she howled, her voice carrying across the battlefield. "To me, show them what we are made of." Her 50 Omega warriors rallied to her cry, their own transformations creating a blazing constellation of power. Together, they became a force unlike anything the Southern Kingdoms had ever faced. They did not just fight. They dominated. They tore through the enemy lines like wolves through sheep, their enhanced abilities turning the tide of battle. Finn threw armored knights like they were children. Lyra predicted attacks before they came, making her untouchable. Petra moved so fast she seemed to be in 3 places at once, and Kira led them all, a silver storm of claws and teeth and unstoppable will. The Southern forces began to break, their confidence shattered by this unexpected display of power. The rogues, seeing their allies fleeing, scattered into the forest, and Lucius, seeing his carefully laid plans crumbling, tried to run. Kira caught him before he made it 10 steps. She shifted to human form and grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand despite his greater size. "You killed my warriors. You betrayed your king. You sold out your people to foreign enemies. Give me one reason why I should not end you right now." Lucius clawed at her hand, gasping for air. "Please, I was only trying to save the kingdom from your corruption. I meant no real harm." "No real harm? Look around you, traitor. Count the bodies. Look at the Omega warriors who died because of your schemes. You meant nothing but harm, and now you will face justice for it." But even as she prepared to end him, a familiar presence washed over her through the mating bond. Dante was coming, and he was bringing an army. Minutes later, the sound of thousands of paws thundering across the ground filled the air. The king's main force arrived like divine judgment, 3,000 warriors in perfect formation, with Dante himself at their head in his massive black wolf form. The remaining Southern forces saw them coming and fled without even attempting to fight. This was not a battle they could win. Dante shifted to human form and surveyed the carnage with cold fury in his gold eyes. When he saw Kira holding Lucius, understanding dawned on his face. "So this is how it ends," Dante said, his voice deadly quiet. "My own council member selling out the kingdom to our enemies, working with rogues to slaughter innocents, all because you could not accept that change had come." "My king, you must understand," Lucius wheezed. "She has poisoned your mind. She has destroyed our traditions. I only wanted to restore the proper order." "The proper order is whatever I say it is. I am the Alpha King. My word is law, and you have committed the highest treason." Dante looked to his guards. "Take him to the dungeon. He will stand trial before the full court, and when he is found guilty, he will face the traditional punishment for traitors." As the guards dragged Lucius away, Dante turned to Kira, his expression softening. "Are you hurt?" "Nothing serious, but we lost 17 warriors, including 3 from my order. The rest survived because we fought together." She looked at the Omega warriors gathering around her, battered and bloody but victorious. They proved themselves today. Every single one of them fought like legends. Dante nodded, pride evident in his eyes. They proved that the old ways were wrong. That strength comes from spirit, not birth. This battle will be remembered as the moment the kingdom truly changed. And you, my mate, will be remembered as the queen who led that change. The cleanup took days. The village was saved and began rebuilding immediately. The Southern Kingdoms sent ambassadors pleading for peace, claiming Lucius had acted without their true support. Dante accepted their surrender and extracted heavy concessions to prevent future betrayals. Lucius stood trial before the full court and was found guilty of treason, conspiracy, and mass murder. The traditional punishment was death, but Dante offered him an alternative. permanent exile to the far wilderness, stripped of rank and honor, to live out his days as the rogues he had allied with. Lucius chose exile and was marched beyond the borders, never to return. 3 months later, on the first day of spring, Kiera stood on a balcony overlooking the kingdom she now helped rule. The palace courtyard below was filled with Omegas, hundreds of them who had come from across the realm for a special ceremony. They were volunteers for the newly expanded Order of Silver, which now had the authority to recruit from every village and settlement. Dante stood beside her, his hand in hers, their bond thrumming with contentment and love. "You have done it, Kiera. You have changed everything." "We have done it," she corrected. "You gave me the platform, but yes, things are different now. Better, not perfect, but better." "What will you do with this order you have built? They are loyal to you personally. That is a lot of power to wield." "I will use it to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to give Omegas the chance to rise based on merit, not birth, to ensure that no wolf ever has to hide their true nature again." She looked up at him, her storm-gray eyes meeting his gold ones. "That was always the goal. That is why I accepted your deal in the first place. And now you are queen, ruler of a kingdom, mate to the most powerful alpha alive. Does it feel strange?" Kiera laughed, the sound bright and free. "Everything feels strange. A year ago, I was gathering herbs in a village, trying to hide what I was. Now I stand here beside you, planning the future of an entire realm. If someone had told me this would happen, I would have thought them mad. Fate works in mysterious ways." "So it does." She turned to face him fully, standing on her toes to reach his height. "But I regret nothing. Every battle, every challenge, every moment of fear and doubt, it all led me here. To you, to this. I would do it all again in a heartbeat." Dante kissed her forehead, then her lips, gentle and loving. "As would I. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Kiera. The best thing that has ever happened to this kingdom. I love you." "And I love you," she whispered against his mouth. "My king, my mate, my equal." Below them, the ceremony began. New recruits being sworn into the Order of Silver, pledging to serve with honor and protect the innocent. Omegas from across the kingdom, stepping forward to claim their power, to embrace their strength, to write a new chapter in the history of their people. And Kiera watched them with pride swelling in her chest, knowing that this was just the beginning. The old order had fallen. The new order was rising from its ashes. There would be more challenges, more battles, more enemies who resisted change. But she would face them all with Dante at her side and an army of silver wolves at her back. The Omega who had once been invisible, insignificant nothing, had become a queen. And in doing so, she had proven that strength was not about rank or birth, but about courage, determination, and the will to stand up for what was right. The future was bright. The future was theirs, and Kiera intended to make the most of every moment of it. Years would pass, and the kingdom would thrive under their joint rule. The Order of Silver would grow to thousands, with chapters in every territory. Laws would continue to evolve, making the realm more just with each passing season. And when Kiera and Dante's children were born, cubs who carried both the royal bloodline and the ancient silver wolf power, the kingdom celebrated the true merging of old and new. The Omega who defeated half the Alpha King's warriors had indeed changed everything. But more than that, she had proven that change was possible. That courage could triumph over tradition. That love could bridge any divide. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all. If you enjoy this video, kindly leave a like, subscribe for more, and share for others to see. Thanks for watching.